Good evening. I'm Laura Jones, host of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. In just a few minutes, we will begin the first and only debate in New Jersey's 7th Congressional District for the seat currently held by Republican Congressman Tom Kean Jr., who is being challenged by Democrat Sue Altman. This 90-minute debate is presented by On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Our sponsors this evening are AZI, AARP New Jersey, and the NJEA, New Jersey Education Association. Let's go over the rules of this evening's debate. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. After that, our panel will ask a series of questions related to national and state issues and the campaign for Congress. We realize that for any number of topics covered tonight, we could easily dedicate an entire debate to, but in the interest of covering as many topics as possible, we will keep the conversation moving along with our timeline. Respectfully, I ask both candidates to stick to their allotted time. If a candidate goes too long, I will hold up my hand. If that doesn't work, then I'll interrupt. And if that doesn't work, I've got a bell, and I'm not afraid to use it. The questions are coming from David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe, Mike Rasmussen of the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe. Questions will alternate between the two candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer and 1 minute to respond. If a candidate is attacked during the response, his or her opponent will receive an additional 30 seconds to respond. I reserve the option of a follow-up question before moving on. Candidates will also have 90 seconds for a closing statement. Now, my job is to be moderator, not to take sides, not to give my opinion, so I will moderate and keep this debate on course. I'm going to look to each candidate to make sure what their opponent says is based on fact. We conducted a virtual coin toss before the start of the debate. The winner of that coin toss is Sue Altman, who opted to go second in opening and closing statements, so Tom Kean will have the first statement. New Jersey debate night is getting started. Stay with us. First, though, here's a look at the candidates' campaign videos.
Nearly 20 years ago, I took on one crooked politician. I also fought corruption in Trenton. And just last year, voted to expel a member of my own party for violating the law. Now, I'm supporting a bipartisan bill to ban members of Congress from trading stocks, and authored another to make certain that public officials aren't investing in foreign adversaries. I'm Tom Kean Jr., and I approve this message because you deserve a congressman that you can trust.
I'm really done with Tom Kean Jr.
Kean is your typical say-anything, do-nothing politician.
I gave the guy a chance.
Junior is nothing like his dad. He has a secret anti-abortion agenda, and I don't like that.
I like what I see in Sue Altman.
Sue has taken on corruption in both parties, saving us taxpayers money.
And I trust that she will make New Jersey a safer and more affordable place to live.
This year, I'm voting Sue Altman for Congress.
I'm Sue Altman, and I approve this message.
We rely on our police to keep us safe, to protect and serve. They rely on Congressman Tom Kean Jr. Millions delivered to local law enforcement, leading the fight against fentanyl. A bipartisan push to stop auto thefts. New Jersey's law enforcement is backing Kean because it doesn't matter what you need. Tom Kean Jr. is the congressman you can always trust to keep you safe.
I'm Tom Kean Jr., and I approve this message.
I've been in law enforcement for 35 years.
32 years.
Walked the beat.
And now a sheriff.
I've never seen this type of crap coming out of Tom Kean Jr. It's a disgrace. Here's the truth. Sue Altman gets it.
Sue grew up in a family of cops.
It goes back generations.
She's got a plan.
Backed by law enforcement like me.
Like me. To get us the resources we need.
To get guns off the street and to keep our communities safe. That's why I want.
Why we need
Sue Altman representing us in Congress.
I'm Sue Altman, and I approve this message.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
and welcome to New Jersey Debate Night. I'm Laura Jones, and this is the first and only debate in New Jersey's 7th Congressional District between the incumbent, Tom Kean Jr., and challenger Sue Altman. It is presented by the New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Our sponsors this evening are AZI, AARP New Jersey, and the NJEA, New Jersey Education Association. Our panelists this evening are David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe, Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and Joey Fox, congressional correspondent for the New Jersey Globe. We've gone over the rules of the debate prior to airtime. We've also established the order of questions and responses, which will alternate between the two candidates. A coin toss was conducted earlier, won by Sue Altman. She's opting for the second opening statement. So, Tom Kean, you are up first. Mr. Kean, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and it's great to be with you this evening. I ran for public office and for Congress because I want to be able to help people. One of the people that I was able to help in the last year was a disabled veteran. He's an individual who was near homelessness, and he'd gone into surgery, and after routine procedure, lost both of his limbs. We were able to, he was near homelessness. We found a solution where you found him permanent housing, and we made sure he had a new nursing rotation. And so we have also found common ground on policy issues down in Washington, D.C. I've always reached across the aisle to find that common ground to make New Jersey more affordable, to make sure we're energy independent, and also to make sure that we have the back of our police and public safety officers. My opponent, on the other hand, since 2019, has been a paid extreme political activist who supports progressive causes and will never stand up to the far left wing of her own party. Since 2019, she supported every single tax increase that is on the state and federal level. She supported every single spending increase as well. In addition, she supported defunding the police. She supported allowing copcos out of jail. He supported legalization of narcotics. Those are extreme positions that are out of step with people of the 7th Congressional District, and those extreme positions will have extreme consequences if she's elected to this office. Thank you for hosting this event tonight. I'm asking tonight for the people's votes. Thank you.
Tom Kean, thank you very much. Sue Altman, over to you and your opening statement. You have 90 seconds.
Hello, everyone. I am Sue. I'm a former professional basketball player turned teacher turned anti-corruption advocate who fought both parties in Trenton. And I am honored to be considered to represent one of the most beautiful districts in the entire country, my home, where I'm from, New Jersey's 7th District. I'm running because the next 3 weeks will determine the course of this country for the next 3 decades. And I'm running because this moment requires political courage, something that sadly my opponent doesn't have. My opponent has been in politics for 23 years. He knows exactly what he's doing when he dodges the press, when he doesn't hold town halls, when he avoids his constituents. Because you see, Tom Kean Jr. has an unsolvable problem. The values of his voters and the values of his donors are not the same. His donors, the National Republican Party, and extremist billionaires represent an insane point of view. They want to ban abortion nationwide. They want to monitor women's pregnancies, I guess, so you can't run off and get a secret abortion. They want to end gay marriage. And they want to make sure that we are all suffering from a society that is less educated than it should be. But those values don't match the values of this district. This district believes in institutions and the rule of law and personal freedoms and women's rights. And when I get to Congress, I will fight for protect contraception, to codify Roe, to bring back the SALT deduction, and above all, I will be accessible. I will represent this district, not billionaires and extremists in Washington. Thank you.
Now to our panel, David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe. You are up first with your questions. David, to you.
Congressman Kean, I'll start with you. For nearly 250 years, your Kean family ancestors have been on the forefront of speaking up, regardless of political risk. And the Keans opposed slavery. They backed the insurgency candidacy of Abraham Lincoln. They fought for civil rights since the 19th century. Your father and your grandfather were proud moderates. You have endorsed Donald Trump. and you voted for some deeply conservative candidates for Speaker, like Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson. You've not been critical of your own party's performance in Congress. Why should the voters of New Jersey's 7th District trust you for another 2 years?
I've always been an independent voice for the people of this district for the last 2 years, and since taking office in the state legislature. I listen to my constituents and focus on the principles that are important to them and supporting the Constitution. I've stood against my party on the SALT deduction. I've stood against my party on milk-of-stone and the shipping across state lines. I've been focusing on making sure we have more affordability in this state and in this country. I will always stand up for the principles of making sure that people have educational opportunity, that they have access to affordability, to make sure that we can make a stronger country going forward. And it's important that each generation is proud of the next generation, where they can continue to focus on the priorities that are necessary to help bind this country together. And that's what I have worked on state legislature, and so I work in Congress and will continue to be strong in that way.
So
Ms. Altman, what are you for response?
Yes, Congressman. So one of the things I'm struggling with is understanding why you would represent this district, where you could have been one of the most moderate, one of the most reasonable voices in Congress, but you voted for Jim Jordan twice. You endorsed Donald Trump on the day he was convicted, and you've had Mike Johnson into New Jersey twice to fundraise for you. There's a famous notion in politics that if you follow the money, you know where someone's heart is. And Congressman, you seem like a really nice guy, but right now what we need is political courage. We need someone who will stand up to Trump. We need someone who will stand for women's rights. There are women who are bleeding out in parking lots right now. There are women whose bodies right this second are in sepsis because they can't access the reproductive freedom and care that they need in other states. I am very, very concerned because with you in Congress, I'm worried that if Mike Johnson has the gavel, we will have a national abortion ban, and that will include the women of New Jersey.
Tom Kean, you can have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Certainly. My opponent is supported by extreme individuals. She was the head of the Working Families Party. She received her money during that time, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that were from people who were hidden from the voters. And she is a progressive activist who will always side with extreme points of view. Bernie Sanders calls her party the closest thing to communism and socialism in this country. And he said that in an improving way. She stands with people who want to do extreme harm to the fiscal and values of this country.
And Ms. Altman, let me ask you your first question. You spent several years as an activist. You were a zealous voice for New Jersey working families when you led it. Their national arm has supported defunding the police. They've supported ending U.S. military aid to Israel, supported a Green New Deal, Medicare for all. Some of their positions are among the most far left in American politics. Now you're running for Congress in a more moderate district, and some of your views have changed. Your positions have changed. Is that just to win an election? And why should 7th District voters trust you?
So I've broken with the left in two very important ways. One, I support Israel. I've stood up against anti-Semitism on both the left and the right, and I fully support Israel's right to defend itself, especially when it's essentially fighting a two-front war with Iranian proxies. And I've broken with the left on defund the police. I've apologized for a tweet, one single tweet I did over 4 years ago, and I've done my homework, and I know what a comprehensive vision is for public safety. We need to invest in recruitment and training and community services because it's not fair to ask police to get whatever they get when they answer a call and to put their lives on the line. So it is not accurate that I've never broken from the left. And for most of my time in New Jersey, I have fought against corruption in both parties. I have fought for better ballots. I've fought for voter access. And I have fought against one of the most powerful people in our entire country who happened to be a Democrat, because I believed him to be corrupt, and he's since been indicted. So I have the scars to prove that I will stand up for New Jersey's taxpayers and residents, even at my own personal risk.
Tom Kean, over to you.
Thank you. let's be clear. In 2021, when her Working Families Party had its official position that aid to Israel should be conditional, she supported that. In 2022, she said that she supported anti-Semitic candidates in Ohio on the congressional level, and she said we need more people like that. It wasn't only when she changed jobs seeking office that she changed her position in that regard. And even on the campus of Columbia, she waited too long to actually stand up. She hadn't made a statement against Rutgers and what happened there either. Also, when you're looking at the defund police movement, literally, she was person. It wasn't just a tweet. It was, according to the PBA, they said it actually put cops in harm's way, her positions. And people know it did. When you look at the things that she has stated and done, she has put cops in harm's way. She's made our communities less safe. It wasn't just a tweet. It was a continuity of an activist priority.
Sue Altman,
Can I
I'll give you 30
respond, please?
seconds.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
30
is
seconds.
inaccurate. I mean, the National Republican Party has already tried to promote falsehoods about my position. When the anti-Semitism task force came out at my alma mater, I stopped what I was doing. I composed a tweet. I have been on the phone. I have held roundtables in this district with Jewish leaders, and it makes me incensed that you will use this against me because it's wrong. It's wrong to tokenize the Jewish people. It's wrong to say that I'm anti-Semitic when I'm not. And the anti-Semitism has been active and alive and well at Bedminster. Trump's golf course has hosted neo-Nazis, and you've said nothing. So don't you dare lecture me.
Joey Fox, congressional correspondent at the New Jersey Globe. Your questions.
Yeah, thanks. So I'd like to dive into the issues, obviously, starting with the issue of reproductive rights. So Congressman Kaine, the first question is for you. We're now 2.5 years out from the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and the nationwide constitutional right to an abortion. With those 2.5 years of hindsight, do you think that decision was the right one?
I think it's appropriate to send this decision down to the states, and so people can go to the local leaders and be involved in this regard. I am pro-choice. I have a 21-year record of supporting pro-choice positions, and I would oppose a national abortion ban. And on the state level, I've also promoted measures that would ensure people have easier access to care on Medicare and otherwise. My opponent in this regard has an extreme position. She supports a position that will allow people to get abortions for any reason up until birth, including the 7th, 8th, and 9th months. That's an extreme position. She also supports not allowing doctors to be the only ones who can conduct this procedure. That's an extreme position. She also supports not allowing for parental notification. That is an extreme position as well. Those positions are out of step with the people of the 7th Congressional District.
Sue Altman.
Congressman, respectfully, you voted against funding Planned Parenthood 12 times in the state legislature. You voted against codifying Roe as recently as 2022, when we knew Roe was going to get overturned at the national level. You will not sign on to a bill protecting and enshrining IVF into law. You voted against women in the military leaving their bases to get abortions. And you know you're trying to hold two things in your mind at once because you have a secret website, or you used to, that showed pro-life, and now you come on here and you say you're pro-choice. Congressman, there are women bleeding out in parking lots. There are women whose bodies have full body infections, sepsis. And the states where abortion has been outlawed and criminalized, doctors, OBGYNs are fleeing in record numbers. At what point is it the federal government's job to make sure women are protected and women's rights are protected? And I find it very ironic that you think that that is an extremist point of view. Well, sir, people dying in parking lots is an extremist point of view.
Mr. Kaine, I give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
What is the extremist point of view is not allowing parents to know when the kids are having an abortion. But the extremist point of view is allowing people for any reason until the 8th and 9th month to have an abortion. What's extreme is allowing people other than doctors to conduct that procedure. That was what was included in the bill that was just referenced. It was not a codification of Roe. It was an extension through the 9th month, which is a very different thing. I am pro-choice, and I would oppose a national abortion ban.
So, Ms. Altman, I'll pick up on that and ask you, New Jersey itself has very, very strong abortion protections. And some Democrats, like Governor Murphy, have suggested making its laws even more all-encompassing. So I wanted to ask you, are there any parts of New Jersey law regarding abortions as it stands right now that make you uncomfortable?
No, there's not. I think New Jersey is, for a very good reason, accepting women from all over the country right now who are in emergency situations who come here to seek health care. I am not a medical professional. My opponent is not a medical professional. And these issues, these very technical, personal decisions, are issues that should be left between a woman and her doctor. There is a woman in our district whose baby was born without a brain, and she needed to get an abortion late in her pregnancy. And Congressman, it's not the government's business to know the ins and outs of everyone's pregnancy. Pregnancy is exceedingly difficult on the body. It's a total body stressor. There are vanishingly few women, and you know this, Congressman, who carry babies all the way until the end and then suddenly decide to abort them. It happens in tragic, awful situations, and it happens when women's lives are in danger. If that's the only exception, then why haven't you signed on to Mikey Sherrill's bill, which would enshrine into law medically necessary abortions? But you haven't, because you are at the beholden of Mike Johnson, the Speaker, because he fundraises for you.
Mr. King.
My opponent has an extreme position. She supports abortion through birth. That's an extreme position. She doesn't support having parents know when the kids are having an abortion. She also supports people other than doctors being able to conduct abortion. I am pro-choice, and I also think we should be prioritizing the life and the health of the mother. And I would oppose a national abortion ban. But my opponent has an extreme position that's out of step with the voters of this district. And she, as you just heard, supports a piece of legislation that is now law in New Jersey that allows abortion through birth. She supports not having parents know what's happening in their kids' lives. And also it allows people other than doctors to be able to conduct it. That's an extreme position that's out of step with the people of this district.
So I want to talk about another topic that is sort of adjacent to this and has come into the spotlight this year, which is in vitro fertilization. Congressman Kane, you have said that you strongly support the right to IVF, and a lot of your fellow Republicans have said that they agree with you on that issue, including Donald Trump. So if that's true, why hasn't Congress done anything this year to protect IVF? And what in your second term would be different? What would you do to make that happen?
Well, thank you, Joey. Thank you for that question. I have supported IVF since I was first in the General Assembly all the way back in 2001. And I voted to make sure that we had the New Jersey state insurance covered IVF, because I understand the importance of that procedure. Since taking office, I've continued with that support. I've now supported or sponsored 4 different bills that would not only make sure these bipartisan bills would make sure that we covered it from the federal level, but also made sure that we had that they were more affordable. So we had some tax credits and things like that. So we can make sure that important procedure is more affordable for families. My opponent would never reach across the aisle to find that common ground, bipartisan solutions, just not who she is in her history. Everything she would do would be on the far extreme of her own party versus reaching across the aisle, find the common ground on important health and family building bills like this.
Before Ms. Altman comes in, I just want to press you on the first part of that question, which is why hasn't this already happened? If you've got these bills, if all these Republicans say they support it, what will change that will make this finally happen?
We were able to get it done on New Jersey. I will do everything in my power to continue to make sure we get it done across on the federal level as well.
Okay, Sue Altman, we'll go to you for your response now.
Okay, so first of all, I definitely worked across the aisle. You don't fight South Jersey corruption just dealing with corrupt South Jersey Democrats. You fight across the aisle and you work across the aisle. And that's what I did in my time as an advocate in Trenton. So please do not mischaracterize it. But on the issue of IVF, right across the Delaware River, Representative Susan Wild, who represents just across the river from up here, She has a bill that would enshrine the right to IVF for all families into law. And I know she has some bipartisan sponsors on that bill. And yet, Congressman, you have not signed on to that bill. And I forgot to mention in the last question, you've been an advocate who are found to be performing abortions or providing illegal reproductive care. And that's pretty scary. And what we will see is a brain drain from those states, from doctors who otherwise want to help women in those states, but who are afraid of being prosecuted for their medical profession. And so, Congressman, I don't understand why you haven't signed on to Susan Wild's IVF bill, because all the rest of it doesn't matter if it's not enshrined into law.
Mr. Kaine, 30 seconds.
I support IVF. When I first entered the legislature, I support it now. I have sponsored, as Sue knows, 8842, which is a bipartisan bill that actually provides that coverage. And my focus is to ensure that we get that coverage and available across the country. The most important thing we can do is to ensure the safety of this. My opponent has never reached across the aisle. She's never worked with Republicans to find common ground solutions. It's just not what she has done in her entire career since 2019 as an activist for a group that Bernie Sanders once said the closest thing to socialism in this country.
Micah Rasmussen, Executive Director of the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider, you are next with your questions.
Ms. Altman, in your opinion, approximately how much money must an average middle-class family earn annually to afford to live comfortably in the 7th District? And how has that changed since COVID?
That is a fantastic question. I mean, the median income in our district is something like $125,000. So this is one of the more affluent districts in the entire country. It's one of the most highly educated districts in the entire country. And yet I hear over and over again from people in this district how hard it is to make ends meet. They have 2 parents working full time, and they just barely afforded a house in a wonderful school district here in the 7th. And then Donald Trump came along and got rid of the SALT deduction, and they can't find a way to make ends meet. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for people all over the state and all over this country who make far less money than the people in the 7th District. Prices are too high, wages are too low, and those things have not kept pace since the pandemic. I believe it's due to a lack of competition and to corporate greed, but also because prices have just gotten too high and wages are too low. And in this district, I will fight to bring back the SALT deduction, which was a Trump-era punitive tax on the blue states.
Tom Kaine.
We need to restore the SALT deduction. Part of the reason it's getting so unaffordable in this state and across the country is because the out of control spending that's caused this inflation that bipartisan economists knew was going to happen, that my opponent supported her entire career. She understood what the massive government spending would do to people in this district. I was opposed to the SALT deduction taken away in 2017 when it happened, and I've in the state on the floor of Congress earlier this year. I was the only New Jersey member of Congress who voted against a tax bill because it did not include SALT restoration. It's important we do that, but we also have to find the common ground to get that done. My opponent, as a professional activist, just a couple of years ago, didn't support restoring the SALT deduction. In fact, she said there was a giveaway to the rich. This district needs a SALT deduction restored. I'm working as a co-chair of the bipartisan SALT caucus. I'm working regionally and bipartisan bids to get it restored.
Sue Altman, would you like 30 seconds to respond to that?
Yeah, there are bills in Congress that the New York Republicans have sponsored. I don't know if there's any that you've sponsored to restore the SALT deduction, but your characterization of why things are too expensive is so simplistic. It's easy for you to say when you're part of the landed gentry of New Jersey that the government shouldn't have interfered at the end of COVID. And I'm glad they did. But part of the reason prices are so high is because we are living through an unprecedented era of corporate consolidation. As a former basketball player, I am a competitor, and I know that capitalism requires competition. And one role for the government is to be on the lookout for corporate consolidation and to make sure there's competition so that small businesses can thrive and not just billionaires like Elon Musk.
Congressman Kaine, if you are reelected, what concrete steps will you be able to realistically commit to taking in Congress to help families afford to live comfortably in the 7th District for the next 2 years?
Well, as you know, the tax package will be renegotiated next year, and we need to get the SALT deduction restored. And as I have been fighting since I got there, we will make sure it gets included. We need to make sure we continue to have lower tax rates that are here. We also need to make this country energy independent once again. We need to make sure we have more manufacturing as well. My opponent, is an extreme activist. She has voted for she has supported every single spending bill since 2019, that was on state level or on the federal level. She opposed the SALT restoration as a professional paid activist. She supports every single spending program that will make this state less affordable and actually less competitive on the world stage. She has harmful policies because she supports increasing spending, increasing taxes, and increasing regulations, which are the things that are hampering and hurting small businesses, hurting families. Everything has gotten more expensive in New Jersey because of the policies that Sue Altman supports.
Sue Altman.
Yeah, Congressman, I'm just barely old enough to remember a time when the Republican Party was the party of small business, was the party of economic competition. But let's look at our farming sector. The last remaining farms in NJ-7 are beautiful, small, family-run farms. You can go apple picking there this time of year. It's wonderful. Everyone should go. But the type of farms that the Republicans support, do you know that 75% of our pork in this country is produced by 4 companies and 85% of our beef by 3 companies? And all the tax incentives that go out to like Iowa for corn, that's the type of agribusiness that the Republican Party supports. And what that means is that small farmers, small businesses, the kind of places that give our district character, are squished out of the market. And when I'm in Congress, I will fight like heck to protect those small farms and those small businesses from the type of corporate consolidation that Republicans have been all about in the last 20 years.
Congressman, on Friday, you attended a ribbon cutting for a solar farm in White Township. Is green energy affordable energy for families in the 7th District?
I support all of the above energy strategy. And we need to make sure that we're 42% nuclear in this state, we're 40%, 9% natural gas, and we've got renewables. We need to do what we can from a solar perspective, from a land-based wind perspective, and making sure that we have alternatives. We are an ingenuity state. We're an innovation state. Our focus needs to be make sure it's affordable. My opponent supports the Green New Deal. That's an out-of-step program that increased costs on New Jersey households by over, according to the Congressional Budget Office, by over $630,000 over 10 years. She has an extreme Green New Deal approach to regulation and to spending that will cripple New Jersey families, will cripple New Jersey manufacturers, will make the state unaffordable, will actually make our country less competitive on the world stage. So that's the approach that I think it's better to have an all the above approach.
Sue Altman.
Congressman, I don't even know if you could name what's in the Green New Deal, but you're at a solar ribbon cutting. Like, Congressman, there was a time, once upon a time, Christine Todd Whitman, your father, they were pro-environment Republicans. This district has all this land preserved because Republicans, in part, were the ones who led on that, making sure the Highlands Act was passed and our clean water and our open space. So to throw around the Green New Deal like it's some kind of radical thing when I don't even think you know what's in it. And at the same time, the IRA had huge investments in green energy, but you disparage that as if it was some kind of socialist intervention. Congressman, you and I both know that our economy is moving toward a green economy. We have to. There's no way we can compete overseas if we're not reducing our impact on fossil fuels and increasing our homegrown energy. And we have to do it in a way that's responsible and that speaks to the people whose jobs are in that sector, but we must move quickly and we must move efficiently. So, Congressman, we can be pro-environment, and you don't have to use scare tactics against the Green New Deal. Being pro-environment includes energy, but it also includes things like open space and clean water and clean air.
Tom Kean, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond before moving on.
We need to ensure we have an all of the above energy strategy. not one that is dictated by extreme spending and extreme regulations that are out of step with what is necessary to happen to actually compete against other countries. I support green energy. I support making sure we have a responsible pathway, and I support competition. My opponent has a position that's out of step with the needs of New Jersey, out of step with the needs of this country. And in fact, she protested energy independence in this country, in Newark, because she got support from a company that was closely tied with the Chinese government. We need to be innovative in this country.
Okay, we're going to go back to David Wildstein with his next round of questions. Over to you.
Thanks. I'd like to ask a series of foreign policy questions. And Ms. Altman, I'll start with you. In the vice presidential debate, both candidates dodged this question, so I'm hoping neither one of you will. Some experts believe that Iran can build a nuclear bomb within the next year. If there's evidence that this is taking place, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike on Iran by Israel?
So I'm deeply concerned if that's indeed good intelligence. Israel is an important ally in the Middle East. It has every right to defend itself. And Iran has said over and over again that it wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and wipe the United States off the face of the earth. So Israel is a really important intelligence partner. We do a lot of businesses with Israel, and they are a democracy in the Middle East. And it's important that there's a Jewish homeland, because Lord knows there is a lot of anti-Semitism here in this country, and there always has been. In fact, there's country clubs that didn't admit Jewish people until later in this century. So this is a very important question. I think there could be a case made for a preemptive strike on Iran if that was indeed the case, but I'd be very careful. I'd want it to be very surgical, and I'd want to make sure that we were eliminating its ability to recreate this nuclear threat, because I think overall what we're going for in the Middle East is lasting peace, because a lasting peace is a stable peace for Israel and the region.
Tom Kane.
Iran has supported the Houthis. They have supported Hamas. They have supported Hezbollah. Hamas attacked and killed and kidnapped Israeli citizens. There are still U.S. citizens that are captured. That we need to do whatever we can to make sure that Israel has the tools, intelligence, and the time to win this fight. And I would support Israel making that decision and going in and on its own. I think it's extraordinary. What this current administration has allowed to happen on the world stage, where the Iran is tied up with Putin and with China, not only in Ukraine, but here in the battles in and around Israel. We need to make sure that we have a strong approach, allow Israel to stand up against Iran, and if it's necessary to strike its nuclear power or its other energy generating powers, we should allow them to do that. And we need to make sure that Israel has the right to win this fight, as well as we need to ensure that we stand up against anti-Semitism anywhere in this world.
And Congressman, I'm going to stick with you on the next question. I'm going to repeat the same question I asked U.S. Senate candidates last week. Do you support the United States supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles so that they can hit targets deeper into Russia? And how would you balance your support of Ukraine with the threat of Russia using nuclear weapons?
The one thing that President Zelensky has asked for, whether he was in this country when I met with him or when I was in Kyiv and had those conversations, is he wants those long-range attack weapons. He needs 200 kilometers. He needs the weapons to be able to use them in ways that he sees fit. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has stood in the way of him being able to use those weapons. I have been sanctioned by Putin because a year and a half ago because of my strong support for Ukraine. We should allow them to use the ATACMS. We should allow them to use the other missiles. We should make sure that they have that support. My opponent would never counter Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in this regard. They have been weak. She hasn't stood up against what Biden has not allowed Zelensky to be able to do. We need to make sure that Zelensky has the tools and the weaponry. And Great Britain has asked Biden to go in a different direction because he is wrong in this regard. My opponent would never be able to stand up against Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
Sue Altman.
I got to jump in here. Donald Trump is actively rooting for Vladimir Putin to win this war. We just found out last week that he sent COVID testing machines to Putin. He has praised Putin. He has praised the dictator of Hungary. Donald Trump is rooting for authoritarians in Russia and all over the world. So please, please, it's because of Democratic support that we were able to get that aid bill passed through Congress. Mike Johnson couldn't do it because the extremist in your party blocked that bill that would have helped Ukraine. Putin is a thug. He is a bully. And I used to teach history, and I know what happens to Europe if you don't stand up to a bully. You got to nip it in the bud. You got to fight them, because if Ukraine goes, then Poland goes, and NATO goes, and then we're in World War III. The whole world is watching if the United States will elect Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, because the whole world knows that Donald Trump is unstable, he's erratic, and he has authoritarian impulses. And we need to stand up to Trumpism for this reason and so many others. So please, Congressman, get your own party in line before you lecture me about ours.
Congressman, let me go back to you. This week marked 1 year since the Hamas attack on Israel. Do you believe the United States should unconditionally support Israel? And if not, what conditions do you support?
Absolutely, yes, I do. Israel is doing everything that it can through the IDF. It is trying to root out terrorists in Hamas and in the Gaza Strip. And these are individuals who have raped and killed and pillaged throughout that region, and have said with great frequency that they want to do it again once they get, and they're being supported by Iran and the Hezbollah. And so Israel needs to do is have the time and the resources necessary to win this fight and make sure it prosecutes that case. Because this is a position where we need to be strong in our alliance. It's a democracy. It's a country that we need to support. It fights for the same moral rights that we do as a country, and allowing the Israel to fight against Hamas and in that strip and in Hezbollah, and because that's extraordinarily important for the future of this country as well.
Sue Altman.
Yeah, I mean, if you are born a woman in the Middle East, you want to be born in Israel. If you are born gay in the Middle East, you want to be born in Israel. And it is of the utmost importance that we give Israel the same support that they need. What happened on October 7th was a horrific, horrible terrorist attack by Hamas on innocent civilians. And Hamas knew what it was doing. It went up, it attacked, and then it ran underneath tunnels where it's been hiding and holding hostages who we still need to return home. And so it's an ugly, awful, horrible war. And my heart goes out particularly to the women and children of Gaza. But Israel has to be able to defend itself. And I will fight with everything I have to make sure that that democracy succeeds, because it's the right thing to do, but also because they are an ally in the Middle East. We have conditions on all aid that we supply all around the world, and we should not hold Israel to any different standard. They should be held to the same standard as everyone else, which I believe the Biden administration has done.
Moving on now to Joey Fox.
And if I may,
go ahead, 30 seconds.
As recently as 2021, please remember, my opponent supported conditioning aid in ways that were different.
That's not true, Congressman.
Working Families Party. And so we have to focus as make sure that Israel has the weapons and the intelligence necessary. And the world stage needs to know that we are standing with Israel in this regard, because when they look at what's happening with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Iran, with the Houthis and the Straits of Hormuz, we need to show strength. We need to show being an aggressive ally on our allies' behalf.
Congressman,
so
you can make your
seconds.
point. Yeah, you can make your point without lying about my background and without lying about my stance. I have never held a public stance on Israel. I have fought against the BDS movement on the left. I've been to Israel. I biked across Israel. I got teaching materials from Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, so I could teach my high school history students how to watch for anti-Semitism, how to watch for hateful propaganda. And you know which party has the most hateful propaganda? It's the right wing of your party. Where were you when neo-Nazis were being hosted in the Bedminster golf course that belongs to Trump? You were nowhere. There were Jewish leaders around our district and around the state who signed a letter to have you speak out. And I know you got that letter and you've done nothing. So spare me.
I know we could probably spend an entire debate on any one of these questions, but we are going to move on. Joey Fox, you are next with your round of questions.
I want to shift over to the topic of organized labor. The International Longshoremen's Association strike from earlier this month ended relatively quickly and painlessly, but if it had gone on for longer, it was clear that there could have been serious repercussions for American consumers. So Ms. Altman, I'll start with you on this. Do you think that there needs to be any sort of reconsideration of how much power unions hold in situations like this?
Unions are crucial for democracy. They are the balancing we need to make sure that people have power. And workplace organizing is crucial for a healthy democracy. Organizing in general is, but particularly workplace organizing. There was a wonderful op-ed today in the Star Ledger that I hope everyone will read by Hedy Rosenstein. And it outlines precisely why my opponent is terrible on labor. He has fought against OSHA safety requirements. He's fought against the minimum wage. He's cut the retirement benefits to law enforcement and to teachers when he was in the state Senate. He has fought against the PRO Act, which is, by the way, a bipartisan bill that Chris Smith from New Jersey, a Republican, signed on to. Congressman Kaine has never had to work hard. He's never had a physical job. I don't know if he's ever had mud on his shoes. And when I'm in Congress, I will fight like I've always fought for working people, for the dignity of retirement, for the strength of our labor sector. Because in states where there is no labor sector, you see terrible things like what happened in North Carolina, where a CEO forced his workers to go to work on the day of the storm and people died. I will always remember where I came from and be a fighter for the working class.
Congressman, before you jump in, I just want to quickly press you, Ms. Altman. Do you think that there is any sort of imbalance of power here that needs to be corrected? Do you think that unions have too much ability to make these major things like these strikes that impact supply chains happen?
I mean, I was pretty delighted that the strike ended the way it did, because I think that's the power of collective bargaining. With collective bargaining, you can exercise your muscle and then you can negotiate terms that make sense. So if anything, I think the power is the wrong way around. The billionaires control too much capital in our society. People like Elon Musk are funding my opponent's campaign to the tune of over $500,000 so far and counting, and they don't even know how to pronounce his name right. And so from my standpoint, the working person needs a champion in Congress, and that person will be me. The PRO Act is only the beginning. We need to fight hard for working people.
Tom Kaine.
We need to ensure that, I support collective bargaining, and I support prevailing wage, and I've long supported those positions, and I support unions. In fact, the building trades support me, the carpenters support me, the iron workers support me, police and firefighters support me, because they know that I have their backs, that I will make sure that they have the opportunities to grow and focus and ensure that they have a seat at the table, because that's what I have done, not only in the state legislature, but now in Congress. My opponent has an extreme position. She would never reach across the aisle to find the common ground on policies where you can actually find the issues that find the common ground. The port strike was solved because people who've known each other for a number of years came together to find that solution. I support the solution. I think it should be implemented as it was done and negotiated. And we need to make sure that while we continue to do that, we also need to have more manufacturing and more opportunity in this district and in this country.
So, Congressman, I actually want to ask you about that union support. You have indeed been endorsed by some unions who consider you a reliable ally. But in an objective sense, a Democratic-controlled Congress is more likely to pass pro-union legislation than a Republican-controlled Congress. So why should union voters vote for you rather than someone, regardless of your personal views, rather than someone who will give Democrats control of Congress?
Well, we need people who have worked with me over the course of my tenure in the Congress and before that in the legislature know I reach across the aisle to find that common ground, to find that solution, to make sure that we respect prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon, and make sure that we can make sure that the people, and also on the apprenticeship programs, that we can find that common ground to make sure that we've got the right, that people are graduating from high school, college, and career ready, that they're able to go to an apprenticeship program if they want. We also need to ensure that they can go to 2-year or 4-year college and make sure that the programs are there. And we need to do it at a time and a pace that's more affordable. My opponent supports spending increases and tax increases, and for that would actually make it so unaffordable to actually locate new jobs and innovative jobs here in this country. If we're going to be doing things that are necessary to build the future of this country, the future of New Jersey, New Jersey cannot afford Sue Altman's extreme positions and overspending.
Sue Altman.
CWA, NJEA, AFT, 1199, 32BJ, the machinist, IFPTE, the electrical workers, the healthcare workers. I think there's even more, nurses. We have gotten a plethora of labor support, and I am proud to be their champion in Congress. Project 2025, which is like the playbook for what the next administration's Republican agenda is going to look like, specifically wants to outlaw collective bargaining and outlaw the formation of labor unions and leave that up to the states, which for me is a euphemism for taking away rights. I know this is a district that believes in the dignity of the working person, and as a representative of this district, I will fight to make sure that all people who work hard every day will get a dignified retirement, will get important benefits like health care. And you, congressmen, have voted against those things at every turn. You voted to cut the pensions, you voted to cut the retirement benefits, the cost of living for teachers and law enforcement. Congressman, you are a fair weather friend of labor, and there are many Republicans who are much stronger on labor than you are.
Would you like the 30 seconds to respond?
Yes, the interests of the people who are literally building our economy and protecting our communities are bipartisan concerns. There aren't Republican and Democratic approaches. There are people who can find that common ground like I have. When you look at the carpenters and the other members of the building trades who were supporting me, the police officers know that to a person support me. When you look at the firefighters, they all support me because they know I have their back, that we will find those solutions, as I did just this past year when Joe Biden signed my bill into law to push the AFG grants across the finish line to make sure that firefighters are protected. That's what we need to do, whether Republican or Democrat alike.
And Congressman, sign on to the PRO Act. Sorry.
Joey, we're going to go back to you.
Sorry. Yeah. So, Ms. Altman, the New Jersey minimum wage hit $15.13 earlier this year, but the federal minimum wage is still just $7.25. Do you support raising the federal minimum wage, and how high do you think it should be?
Absolutely. We have to tie it to cost of living. My opponent voted down the minimum wage increase here in New Jersey multiple times. Minimum wage is one of the best ways to make sure that our workers at least have the bare minimum to sustain themselves. But it's barely enough. I mean, if you're making $15 an hour, you might have to work 2 or 3 jobs to live in the 7th district. So we have to be very, very mindful about the fact that the minimum wage only gets us so far. We need to make sure we're supporting healthcare and things like dental and vision. We want to make sure that we're supporting things like paid family sick time. The minimum wage is only the tip of the iceberg, but it's absolutely vital, and we should absolutely 100% pass a federal minimum wage law. And if my opponent was so pro-worker, then he would be rushing out the door to sign on to that bill. So I'm confused how he can claim to be pro-worker and against a minimum wage.
Tom Kean.
I think this is an issue that's best handled at the state level, but we also need to make sure we get the regulations and the taxes lower than they are right now. Right now, New Jersey is unaffordable, and because of the policies that my opponent supported, and we have to make sure that we have the jobs that are necessary and make sure that people can continue to seek and gain employment. The most important thing we can do in this regard is ensure that we lower the costs. My opponent vote supports every single spending increase over the course of the last 2.5 years that caused the most dramatic increase in inflation in the last couple of decades. She supports the regulatory policies that make it unaffordable for people to open small businesses. She supports the policies that and over-regulation that make it simply too expensive to operate too many local and small businesses here in the state. We need to make sure that we get those regulations less than they currently are on the state as well as on the federal level.
So I'd just like to ask a very brief follow-up. I know we want to move on to more topics, but just a number from each of you. What do you think is a reasonable federal minimum wage to have? Ms. Altman, you can go first.
I would like to see it in line with New Jersey at $15 minimum wage. And by the way, there's no chance Elon Musk puts $500,000 into the campaign of somebody who is pro-worker. That is just not going to happen.
Okay, Congressman Kean, what's your number?
As I said, I think this is best handled on a state-by-state basis.
So you think that $7.25, the current federal minimum wage, is a good place to leave it?
As I said, I think this is an issue where the local economies know the issues that are important to them, and having the policies that reflect that, and also understanding that we need to create new jobs and for families as well, and lower the cost, because right now all this federal spending is making this state far more unaffordable, and we need to make sure we're competing against our people who we need to beat.
Okay, we're going to move on. Micah Rasmussen, and your next round of questions.
Ms. Altman, Americans largely wind up with the policy options that are put forth by political parties. So what are the ideas you see being championed by either party that you think ought to be part of the solution on immigration and the border? Would it be more effective to move troops currently stationed overseas to the U.S.-Mexico border, or to shutter the border if illegal crossings reach a certain average threshold? Or should we raise the requirements for immigrants to receive political asylum? Or are there different policy options you'd prefer to be part of the solution?
Micah, as you know, I've never stayed within the bounds of what political parties were offering. When I was in Trenton, I worked hard to do things that no one ever thought were possible, like abolish the line. But I will move with your premise for the sake of conversation. On the issue of immigration, we need to increase the amount of border security. We need to invest in security at the border. And I do think the border has been a little bit of a mess. But we had a bill that passed through the Senate that took big steps forward, that would have made it, they would have done a step towards comprehensive immigration reform, which has been something that politicians from the time I was in middle school have been talking about. And yet what happened was that bill, which would have possibly passed the House, Mike Johnson put the kibosh on it. And he did that because Donald Trump told him to. What's so frightening about a next Mike Johnson speakership is that nothing got done in Washington. We had the most ineffective Congress in history, and dare I say, the least effective congressman. When I'm in Congress, I will, believe it or not, work across the border, work across the aisle to fix the border.
Tom Kean.
I voted for the most comprehensive border security bill that ever passed the House of Representatives. In fact, passed on a bipartisan basis. And we need to ensure that we put back in Title 42. We need to, going forward, DACA is something that we also need to be looking at as a promise that needs to be kept. But at the end of the day, let's just remember, there was no bill that passed the Senate. My opponent is lying about that. But and the bill that she would have supported, she says, would actually have increased the number of illegal detentions, because it would have, on a daily basis, would have set a number of illegal boarding crossings that were okay before the Border Patrol were able to step in. That's an extreme position. And in fact, even Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have backed away from that position with their current new proposal. We need to build the wall. We need to have more Border Patrol agents. We need to make sure that we have adjudication that is right. But at the end of the day, we're a nation of immigrants, and we're also a nation of laws.
I'll give you 30 seconds, Sue Altman.
I'm just surprised that you said build the wall. That's pretty incredible. That's pretty Trumpy. Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump wanted to run on immigration. He wants to fan the flames of xenophobia, of nationalism, which is a cheap knockoff of patriotism. In our last town hall in Sussex County, we had a fascinating conversation between a woman who was clearly nervous about the influx of immigrants and someone who wanted to make sure that her son, who was an adult disabled boy, would be able to have the support of a home health aide who was an immigrant. And the two of them were able to find common ground. I know there is common ground on this issue in this country. And without Donald Trump and his cronies fanning the flames of hatred, we can solve this problem. And I look forward to being part of that solution.
Micah, back on to you.
Mr. Kean, U.S. Border Patrol data show 56,000 monthly migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border in August, as compared with 75,000 encounters in President Trump's final month in office. Can we agree that these are accurate snapshots of the border situation at 2 points in time? And if so, what do they tell us about the political debates that we're seeing on immigration and the border?
Well, first and foremost, as you know, in the last 3.5 years, there were over 10 million illegal unvetted migrants who were let into this country because of a porous southern border. Think about the consequences on these communities. That meant fentanyl, which crossed the border, an unsecure southern border that infected our communities. It meant child trafficking, include drug trafficking. All of those are consequences of an unsecure southern and northern border. Those are things that my opponent never stood against. She supports a weak southern border and northern border. We need to know who's coming to this country, and we need to know what their intents are. It's who we are to make sure that we have that strength. My opponent also would not seek to strengthen the border patrol or give the resources necessary to make sure that we are safe as a community.
Sue Altman.
Yeah, that's just inaccurate. I agree. We need to have a handle on who's coming to this country. I agree that we need to keep our communities safe. So this is all a misrepresentation. Donald Trump's rallies have gone off the rails. You endorsed Donald Trump. He is now talking about deporting immigrants forcibly using the army and the military and executive orders. That is a really dark, scary thing. And I am just so afraid that if you're in Congress, you are not going to stand up to this dark, terrible, twisted, toxic vision of America that Donald Trump has, because you simply have not stood up to your own party since you've been in Washington. This whole I want to leave it to the states thing is such a cop-out. It's a way for you to avoid accountability. And not having town halls is another way for you to avoid accountability. Not talking to the press, another way for you to avoid accountability. Americans, New Jerseyans, people in this district are sick and tired of trying to pin Jello to the wall with you, Congressman. It's time for you to step up.
Tom Kean, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Let us remember, when you're looking at those border encounters, Joe Biden has changed his enforcement policy over the course of the last couple of months because the consequences of an unenforced southern border were so extreme. When you look at, again, the drugs on the street and the consequences with stolen cars and home invasions as well, those are all consequences of an unsecure southern border that has made this country less safe. And in fact, my opponent wants to go even further to the extreme to allow more people into this country who are unvetted and illegal migrants.
That's just not true, Congressman. That's not true.
Micah, we're going to go on.
Yes. Donald Trump is promising mass deportations on day one of his presidency. These would inevitably be costly, as much as $1 trillion over 10 years, and a large reduction in the GDP of more than 4% due to the loss of workers in industries that can't find enough labor, in addition to the humanitarian costs. So, will you support mass deportations in Congress, Mr. Kaine? And how should we cover these costs? And what will not get done so that mass deportations can be prioritized?
Listen, over the course of the last 3.5 years, 10 million undocumented and unvetted individuals. And these are individuals that come from a whole host of countries. In fact, 60% of this problem would be solved if the Remain in Mexico policy were back in place. We were able to have individuals stop in the country where they first arrived. There are people from all different countries, 194 countries, that have come in through an unsecure southern border and a northern border. And we need to make sure that those individuals who are criminals and who should be deported. And that's where you need to start. My opponent has an extreme position in this regard. She supports allowing, she's to the left of Joe Biden right now on her policies on the border. She supports illegal, unvetted people coming across and unchecked. That is clear. She said that here tonight. We need to ensure that we have the people who can be leaders to find the common ground, to secure the southern border, make our communities safe.
Sue Altman.
Yeah, Congressman, you just dodged the question. Mr. Rasmussen asked you a very specific question. Would you support deporting migrants? Yes or no?
We're going to let you finish your statement, and then we can go back to Tom Kean for a 30-second rebuttal. But we'll go ahead, Sue Altman, and let you finish your remaining 35 seconds.
Now I know how the reporters feel. I obviously do not support deporting migrants. That's the end of my answer.
Mr. Kean, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
As I said in my first minute, I said when we start to look at the people who've committed crimes and were here illegally, that's where we should start to look at the people who are here both illegally, who have a criminal record.
Okay, we're going to move on now. David Wildstein, we go back to you and your next set of questions.
Thanks. There's so many questions to ask, and we're a little behind. So what I'd like to do is this. In this next round, I'm going to read a series of statements, and I'm going to ask that you simply respond with your agreement or disagreement with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You're both going to be on the camera at the same time. If you feel you want to amplify your views, feel free to use both hands if you want. We'll call this the nonverbal portion of the debate, but it'll allow us to just move through some things very quickly, hopefully, and then we'll give you each 60 seconds at the end to address anything that you'd like to. So let's put both candidates up together, and I'll start with this. Joe, you tell me thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you disagree. Joe Biden was the fair and legitimate winner of the 2020 presidential election. Okay. Congress should consider a constitutional amendment to eliminate the Electoral College.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay. Climate change is real, and it's a threat to America's future. Israel is committing genocide, and the U.S. must stop supporting the war with Hamas. Casting your ballot by mail is safe and it's secure. We're getting some agreement now in this round. Congress should consider granting some form of reparations to Black Americans as part of a national apology for the practice of slavery. This is an agree or disagree. I will vote to fund a strong national defense, including nuclear weapons, to ensure that the United States maintains a military advantage over the nations. Social media is a threat to the mental health of children and to Americans of all ages. Phil Murphy has been a great governor for New Jersey. I'm looking forward to another 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House. My party has done everything possible to help me win this election. There are people currently serving in the U.S. House of Representatives who are worse human beings than my opponent. There is extraterrestrial life on a planet beyond Earth. I will unconditionally agree to vote to certify the results of the 2024 election, regardless of whether my preferred candidate wins. Okay, and why don't we, Ms. Altman, be 60 seconds on that round of questions, if anything comes to you that you'd like to comment on.
I want to talk about the reparations thing. So New Jersey remains a segregated state, and I think it's important to study the ways in which we can stop segregation and stop the perpetuity of poverty in this country. And so while I don't believe in reparations, I do think we need to understand how not to repeat history and how to break the cycle of poverty in our country. And that includes poverty across all races, from white folks to Black folks and everyone in between. We need to make sure that we're understanding why poverty seems to be generational and what we can do as a country to break it. Because for every child born in poverty, they have a lower quality of life, lower life expectancy, worse health outcomes, worse educational outcomes. And to say nothing of the humanitarian problem there, it also is a complete and tragic loss of human capital and human potential.
Congressman?
Yeah. My opponent supports getting rid of the Electoral College. She wants to change the Constitution that was set up by the framers to create so that everybody across the country would have a voice. So she also has an extreme position in terms of expanding the Supreme Court. We need to send people down to Washington, D.C. that are supported by Republicans and Democrats alike, like I was last cycle, who can find that common ground and make sure that we have the solutions that are necessary, and make sure that we have the trust to make sure that we can make the right decisions on behalf of our constituents.
Sue Altman, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
No.
Okay. All right. Very good. You agreed on quite a bit there, and we all agree we're going to take a very quick commercial break. Stay with us as we continue debate night here in New Jersey's race for the 7th Congressional District between incumbent Tom Kean and challenger Sue Altman. I remind the candidates they're going to remain on camera during the break. I'm Laura Jones. Stay with us.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Laura Jones, and debate night in New Jersey. This is the first and only debate in New Jersey's 7th Congressional District between the incumbent Congressman Tom Kean Jr., a Republican, and Democrat challenger Sue Altman. Now is the time in our debate where we're going to let the candidates ask a question of each other. First, we have Tom Kean to Sue Altman, then Sue Altman to Tom Kean. Each of you have 2 minutes to respond to this. So first, over to you, Tom Kean.
Okay, thank you. It's important that you're growing up as a New Jerseyan that we protect our environment. We need to make sure we have clean air, clean water, and clean soil. And in fact, I met my wife Rhonda a little over 30 years ago when we were both working for the EPA, and making sure that we have responsible environmental protections while also making sure that we grow the economy is important for future generations of this country. My question for you, Sue, is you've changed your position on so many issues over the course of the last couple months during this campaign. Do you still support AOC's Green New Deal?
I support components of it. I think that it's very important that we transition to a clean economy. I think a lot of what was in the original Green New Deal was supported and enveloped into the last big budget bill that was passed through Congress. And I think there's not a lot radical about investing in public transportation, about starting to grow our green economy, about keeping our clean air and water safe for future generations. I mean, Congressman, as you know, Project 2025 wants to get rid of the Department of Environmental Protection, so that Superfund sites like the one I grew up near on Lower Kingstown Road would never get cleaned up. Areas in New Jersey, this beautiful part of the state that is just a complete, just an area of beautiful rivers and lakes, would be under attack from pollutants. People once said that in New Jersey, we could never clean up our state because it would hurt the economy. But we've been able to. We have cleaner air than ever before, cleaner water than ever before. We've protected the Highland water and watershed. And we need to continue to grow a green economy. I know we can do it. I believe in us. And if it wasn't for partisan bickering, and it wasn't for the incompetence and the nastiness, the divisiveness of our current Congress, of our current presidential nominee on the Republican side, I know we could build a clean economy that works for everyone. There is nothing radical about saving acreage from development. There's nothing radical about building up our flood protections to make sure towns like Lambertville or Clinton or Rahway and Linden are protected. There's nothing radical about making sure there's a one-seat ride from every town in this district. When you were in state politics, you supported Chris Christie, who gutted the ARC tunnel. Would have been done by now. It would have been done more cheaply, and all of this time that commuters have wasted waiting for trains and late NJ transit trains would have been salvaged. So, Congressman, there is nothing radical about a sustainable solution, and that doesn't mean the Green New Deal. That means stop the bickering and the partisanship, which paints aspects of the Green New Deal as somehow awful things, all in sum, when you know they're not.
Now, Sue Altman, you may ask Tom Kean a question, and Tom Kean
Sure.
has 2 minutes to respond.
Congressman, I'm glad we did this. I would have liked to do more. So if you want to do another one, I'm always game. I have it while you were in Congress, while you were in the state Senate, you voted against gay marriage. While you were in the state Senate, you voted down the minimum wage bill. You voted to slash the retirement benefits of law enforcement and teachers. And just a few weeks ago, the day he was convicted of felonies, you endorsed Donald Trump. Congressman, do you regret any of these things, any of these decisions you made, or do you stand by them tonight? Oh, and I forgot one more. You also voted against Planned Parenthood, and you voted against the codification of Roe in New Jersey. So tell me, Congressman, of all these things I've listed, do you regret any of them?
Listen, as you know, I, like many people, Republicans and Democrats alike, when that vote was first cast in 2012 or 2013, have changed their mind on marriage equality. I support marriage equality, and in fact, I voted for it in the state Senate as well. The most important thing we can do is send leaders down to Washington, D.C., who can actually find the common ground and understand what is important in people's lives. My opponent has an extreme position, whether she is not a person who actually works across the aisle to find the common ground, and she will always be on the extreme progressive wing of her own party. The reason that the firefighters are supporting me is because I can work to find the common ground, to find those solutions. The reason that the police, every single police union that has endorsed in this race, has endorsed me, because they understand that the dangerous policies that would make the streets less safe for if Sue Altman policies were prosecuted. We also know that the building trades, people who are working hard to grow this economy and build this economy, are supporting me because they know that Sue Altman is extreme in her policies. I ran for Congress to solve problems for the people. I've joined the Problem Solvers Caucus. I've fought to make sure we lower the overall cost, and also to make sure, because in the Problem Solvers Caucus acknowledges within 4 months of me taking office that I was one of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats who found the common blueprint to keep the government open after only 4 months as in Congress. I've done that on many issues and on domestic and foreign policy. You need a leader who will focus on finding that common ground.
Okay, we're going to go back to our panel and over to Joey Fox for his next round of questions. Joey.
Congressman, you alone among New Jersey's members of Congress don't talk to reporters in the halls of the Capitol. And you turned down a request for an interview from me, on an in-depth interview on your positions and your beliefs. Why is that?
It's, as I respect the press. When we look at, I've had 7 town halls. We've made sure we've reached thousands of constituents. We go to where the constituents want to meet with us, and whether they're senior town halls or citizen or school and veteran town halls. But I also have a policy, and you know this, Joey, from when we were in the legislature, and people around the state know that I've got a policy that when I'm down in Washington, D.C., I make sure that I'm on my constituents' time and making sure that I'm finding their solutions. It's important to schedule that type of conversation. As you know, I have been, right now, I've spoken to the Star Ledger, NJ TV and News. I've spoke to the Bergen Record. I've talked to local people, local groups, including you. So my focus is to make sure we have a direct conversation with our constituents in the ways that they are best able to participate. I also have a weekly weekly newsletters as well as Tuesdays with Tom.
Joey? Excuse me, Sue Altman, your response.
Yeah.
Or Joey, unless you want to follow there.
No.
Okay.
Ms. Altman, you go.
Yes.
Congressman, I have done, by this time next week, I will have done 7 town halls in 7 counties and 1 extra one at Centenary College, New Jersey's crown jewel, our only 4-year university. And you will have done 0 in-person town halls. Every time we do one of these town halls, our organizing team goes out and we recruit people who are undecided voters. And we have meaningful, deep conversation in these town halls. And they're unscripted. People are allowed to get up, we hand them a microphone, and they can ask me anything about the issues. And they have been incredibly productive. They have brought us, I think, closer together as a district. And what's so clear is that people are hungry for this conversation. To not hold town halls, to dodge the press, to avoid your constituents, that is a dereliction of duty. And I understand why you're doing it, because you have a cognitive dissonance you have to hold in your brain. Your donors' values, Elon Musk's values, Donald Trump's values, the extremists in your party, those values don't match the values of our district. And you're worried about having to explain yourself. But Congressman, I'm here to tell you that your absence has created a vacuum and we're filling it with leadership. And what you've done is disrespectful to the people of this district.
All right, I'm going to give the congressman 30 seconds to respond.
The vast majority of people in this district prefer that I come to them, whether it's through the telephone town halls, the in-person district meetings in their communities, and making sure we go to where they are. When we go to the schools, when we go to the veterans, when we go to seniors center, when we are able to have those conversations in person where we can listen and learn. Vast majority of people in this district prefer that type of outreach and in-person communication.
All right, Joey.
Ms. Altman, a cornerstone of Vice President Harris's campaign is to build 3 million new homes nationwide. But as we've seen with development battles in places like Westfield and Summit and elsewhere in the 7th District, new development isn't always warmly received. So do you support the Vice President's plan? And do you think that any of those 3 million homes should be built within the borders of the 7th District?
So there's definitely a housing shortage in New Jersey. And part of that comes from New York City, because New York City has not kept up with its bargain in terms of building housing at all. And so all of that extra need floods over into New Jersey. We need to fix our transportation system before we continue to add pressure onto it. But if we can fix public transportation and we can preserve open space, because that's crucial. And I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s in New Jersey, and I watched beautiful, beloved farms that I loved get paved over and become shopping centers. We have to provide space, open space, and public transportation, but we can build walkable downtowns. We can build places like Clinton and Lambertville, which are beautiful downtowns, and we can make them and make downtowns all over our district accessible to people of all kinds. We can make sure that we have enough housing so that first-time home buyers can afford to purchase homes and live in our communities. It will make us stronger. It'll make us richer as a state. And I'm supportive of plans that build housing in smart, sustainable ways in communities where it's wanted.
Tom Kane.
Yes, I think that one of the things that makes New Jersey so special is you have 3 generations of people who live near each other. And unfortunately, for the seniors, for the parents, as well as, and then the kids, it's unaffordable at every step of the spectrum. And that's in part because the increased spending and increased costs that directly cause inflation. Everybody is making the tough choices between getting the groceries, getting gas, or actually paying for home goods. And the policies that are making this less and less affordable are driven by Sue Altman's allies, who are from the extreme left wing, meaning the progressive parties, and that she allies herself with. I oppose that dense development that was being put into Westfield and a number of other places. They didn't include transparency and didn't include communities in that fight. We need to make sure that we have affordable housing, but we need to make sure that we have the less regulations that are driving up the costs.
So I'm going to forge ahead just in the interest of time, and so we can get to as many issues as possible. Congressman, gun control has not really been, or any type of gun legislation, has not really been a top priority in this session of Congress. But if that were to ever change in a future Congress, what level of restrictions on firearms would you be comfortable with supporting?
Well, on the state level, I've got a record where I supported bump stocks and also making sure that we kept guns out of hands to people who would do others harm. We need to make sure. I do support the Second Amendment and its provisions. I do support an assault weapon ban. I did that on state level and now on the federal level. And I need to make sure that we have the policies that keep our schools safe, our places of worship safe, and our streets safe. And so we need those kind of common sense proposals. And my opponent, on the other hand, supports policies like defunding the police, like an unsecure southern border. Think about what the message that sends when she sends less resources to help people in need who in these communities. We need to make sure that we have the policies that protect our communities.
Sue Altman.
That was an amazing ballerina pivot from guns to the border. So well done on sticking that landing. Congressman, you used to have an A rating, or an F rating, from the NRA. And somehow, between the years of 2013 and 2017, that F rating went up to an A+. In so many ways, this issue to our young people is precisely why they don't trust government. It's precisely why they're frustrated with both parties, because we have not been able to keep our children safe. We must put an assault weapons ban into Congress. We must have universal background checks. We must have red flag laws. We must do things that give law enforcement the tools they need to keep our communities safe. While Speaker Johnson has the gavel, there will be no legislation in Congress to help get bad guns off of our streets. And Congressman, when you were in Trenton, you were no fan and no friend of common sense gun legislation. I have received the endorsements of multiple common sense gun organizations such as Moms Demand and Giffords, and I will be a champion of protecting our children and our students when I'm in Congress by getting dangerous guns off the streets.
We're starting to run a little bit over on time. Tom Kane, 15 seconds.
Republicans who voted to support Joe Biden on the pistol braces in the country, because we need to make sure that we keep those out of the hands of gangs as well. My opponent has an extreme position in that she wants to defund the police. She wants to let cop killers out of jail. She wants free, full narcotics legalization. Think about how dangerous those policies would impact families all across this district, as crime is increasing dramatically day after day in this district.
Okay, we're going to go to Micah Rasmussen. We have time for two more questions. Micah, to you.
Mr. Kane, 10 years ago, you voted with most of the rest of the New Jersey legislature to move to cashless bail. Has that worked as you hoped it would?
I think that the intent was good in that regard, but there are new reforms that have to happen. There have to be consequences associated when individuals, right now, too many people are being let out of jail who are repeat offenders. And when you talk to the police officer, there are not just one provision in that bill that needs to be improved, changed a bit. But the second thing is also you need to make, every other issue that has kept the streets safe have actually been weakened by the Murphy administration. So when you look at the driving down, the fact that there are, in fact, as you know, Phil Murphy tried to make sure that people under 18, if they've committed a violation, the parents wouldn't know. We need to make sure that we have the funding for the cops, funding for the justice system, and make sure that people who commit crimes should face the consequences.
Sue Altman.
Yeah, Congressman, I'm sorry. I can't let go the last answer where you said I wanted to legalize all drugs like heroin and fentanyl and stuff. That is a complete fabrication. I don't even know where that came from. I know you Elon Musk sent out a mailer claiming this, but this is not a thing. It's a complete and utter lie. And I'm disappointed in you, Congressman. You don't have to repeat the lies that your overlords tell you. You don't get a point for every time you use the word extremism. It's disappointing that you resort to lies in this debate because it's unnecessary. When it comes to bail reform, I completely agree that our most egregious multiple-time offenders should not be getting off in bail. That is obviously not a good idea. And I've never supported anything otherwise. So we need to keep our communities safe. We need to fund our law enforcement to keep our communities safe. And Congressman, I would appreciate if you didn't blatantly tell lies about my record or my positions anymore.
Got to give Tom Kean 15 seconds to respond to that.
That was the position of the Working Families Party just a couple of years ago when you worked for that.
They are not me, and that is not my position. Stop. That's not true.
It was
Tom
the position a couple of years ago when they took that position, and you didn't oppose. You have changed your position.
We didn't work on it in New Jersey.
What you changed was your position on police, on Israel, on a number of other issues, only once you became a candidate. That's what people see in you. And what we have to focus here is sending a person down to Congress who's going to be consistent in his support and get the bipartisan support that I have had. Every single police union has endorsed me because they know that she will not have their back.
Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Yep. Okay, we're going to have to end it there with our panel because we have run out of time, tried to cover as many topics as possible. We want to give both of you time for your closing statements from our candidates. Tom Kean, you are first. You have 90 seconds on your closing statements. To you.
Good. Thank you. It's great to be with you again tonight. I want to thank the voters, the panelists for their questions and allowing us to talk about the issues that are important to the people of the 7th Congressional District. I ran for office so I could help solve problems. I joined the Problem Solvers Corps. I fought to keep government open. I fought to secure the southern border. I've had the backs of cops. I stood up to support Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. My entire focus has been to make sure that we find those solutions that keep America strong and energy independent once again. What you have seen tonight from my opponent is an extreme position. She was a professional, paid political activist since 2019, and she has positions that reflect that regard. It was only once she chose to run for office that she started to change her positions. That is wrong for this district. We need an independent leader like I have been in the Congress and before that in the state legislature who will make sure that we put New Jersey values first, that we fight for affordability, like restoring the SALT deduction, making sure that we have lower overall taxes, stop the out of control inflation that is driven by policies that my opponent has supported year in and year out. I'm asking for your vote for a second term because I'm trying to continue to find the common ground to reflect your values. Thank you. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Sue Altman, over to you. Your closing statements, 90 seconds.
Congressman, what we've heard in the last 90 minutes is nothing compared to what you haven't accomplished in the last 23 years in politics. Congressman, with your last name, with your family's legacy, with your family's fortune, you could have been a leader in Congress. You could have been someone who from the get-go stood up to Trumpism. You could have not voted for Jim Jordan. You could have not voted for Mike Johnson. You could have not endorsed Donald Trump. We have a wonderful district. It is one of the most highly educated districts in the entire country. It's a beautiful place full of smart, engaged people who believe in government, who believe in institutions, who believe in the rule of law, and who have no time and no energy for the vulgarity and the toxicity of another Trump election. But Congressman, you haven't stood up to him. You haven't stood up to the most extremist elements of your party. You haven't stood up to them because, to paraphrase Utland Sinclair, it is very hard to stand up against someone who's funding your campaign. Elon Musk funds your campaign. The National Republicans fund your campaign. In contrast with us, we knock thousands and thousands of doors every day. We are out organizing you. We have over 30,000 individual donors. Our campaign is a campaign of the people and for the people. And when I get to Congress, I'm not going to be represented. I'm not going to be accountable to some political party or corporate donors because I don't take a cent in corporate PAC money. I will be accountable to the people of New Jersey 7 because it is the taxpayers who we work for, and it is the taxpayers and citizens of this district that you've ignored for too long. Thank you.
Our time is up, and that concludes New Jersey Debate Night. Now, after a very quick break, our panel is going to be coming back with some closing thoughts, but I'd like to thank our candidates, Tom Kean and Sue Altman. Thank you for your time and for your responses. Thank you to our panelists, David Wildstein, Micah Rasmussen, and Joey Fox. Thank you also to the New Jersey Globe on New Jersey and the Brebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University for producing the debate, and C-SPAN for airing the debate. We also want to thank our sponsors, AZI, AARP New Jersey, and the NJEA. We'd like to remind our audience that we're going to be back on Wednesday, October 16th, that's this coming Wednesday at 8 o'clock, for the first and only debate in the 9th Congressional District between Democrat Nellie Poe and Republican Billy Priamp. I'm Laura Jones. Remember, Election Day is November 5th. Thank you for watching. Stay with us on Debate Night, New Jersey.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
Thanks for staying with us on Debate Night New Jersey. I'm Laura Jones, and for the last 90 minutes, we've been listening to the candidates running for the 7th Congressional District, the incumbent Republican Tom Kean Jr. being challenged by Republican Sue Altman. Our panelists have stuck around to give their thoughts on this debate. David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe, Micah Rasmussen, the Brebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and Joey Fox, also of the New Jersey Globe. So let's get right to it. David Wildstein, before we started our debate, we did something a little different because we wanted to cover as much ground as possible. After going through a number of questions, we did a little bit of a lightning round, and want to get your thoughts on all that we covered and the candidates' responses.
Well, first of all, Laura, it's clear that they don't like each other, and it's clear that while they found some common ground, like they both believe that there is life on other planets, they disagree more than they agree, and that's what these debates are for. It's so that voters, hopefully undecided voters, can listen to the two of them and decide.
All right, David, we're going to come back to you. One of the things, Micah, that we always plan into our debates is we have time for each candidate to respond, and we always give them that 30 seconds for rebuttal if they're attacked. In all the debates we've been doing, and we've done quite a few, not a lot of times do we have to give that extra 30 seconds for an attack. This one, it was every single question we had to add that 30 seconds on for a rebuttal. So I want to get your take on this fiery exchange and all the ground that we were able to cover. What do you think?
Yeah, Laura, I think you run such a tight ship that most of the time we get through all of our questions. We couldn't do that tonight. So that's another indication of how much those 30-second rebuttals were being invoked. Look, they both wanted to make the points. In the case of Tom Kean, he wanted to make the point that Sue is extreme every chance he could, out of step. Those were constant refrains on his part. And Sue, I thought, had two things she wanted to do. One was to show that her positions were more moderate. So, she took the positions that she did on Israel very pointedly. She took him to task whenever she thought that she needed to. Don't you dare lecture me on anti-Semitism when, there have been neo-Nazis at the Trump golf course. I think she also wanted to tie him to Trump. We heard Trump's name quite a few times out of her mouth. I don't think I heard it a single time out of Tom Kaine's mouth all night.
Yeah. Joey, let's go over to you and get your reaction. I was struck by one of the questions about, you flat out ask him why Tom Kaine doesn't always talk to reporters. So what was your take on it, finally being able to ask questions and get some answers?
I think that, I imagine anybody who is following this race closely was not overly surprised by any of the answers tonight. I think that Sue Altman has been, very out and vocal about, what her positions are. When Congressman Kaine declined my request for an interview, I actually gave it to Sue Altman instead. And we talked about some of the same issues. And we talked about, her past as an activist and the ways that she has either evolved or sort of moved away from her former group on Israel and on the police and things like that. So I think that you saw that kind of coming out in full force here. And I think that you saw that she was, she's a first-time candidate. She is, to my knowledge, this was her first debate ever outside of, whatever, college debates or something. You could tell that she was very well prepared for it. But, you also have someone in Congressman Kaine with a very long track record in Congress and then in the state legislature before that. Someone who has taken a pretty consistent lane through the Republican Party throughout his time in both of those offices. And I think you saw that come out tonight. Someone who, is willing to stand up for President Trump or former President Trump in certain circumstances, like when he gave the thumbs up to 4 more years of Trump, but who is mostly concentrated on trying to differentiate his own brand on labor, on abortion, on gay marriage, on these various other issues. And you clearly saw him trying to do that tonight.
Yeah, David, the 7th Congressional District of all of the districts, this is probably the most competitive. It's the one that's kind of gone back and forth between Republican and Democrat. And this was the one and only debate that was held. Again, want to just get your thoughts on what you thought perhaps separated the candidates the most this evening.
Look, I think they were playing to their base. Tom Kaine is, like Joey said, thumbs up on another 4 years of Donald Trump. I was a little surprised that Sue Altman, when I asked whether Phil Murphy was a great governor, she hesitated just a little bit before she gave it a thumbs up. And I think she's being very careful to see that this is a district that Phil Murphy lost by quite a bit. It's a competitive district. It's a competitive race. There are polls that are close. There's polls that are a little bit in the high single digits. But we don't know what the turnout model is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen in the world in the next few weeks. This is a race that America ought to just keep an eye on. And I'll tell you this. This is two good candidates. Kaine is, debates are not his strongest suit, but he is the best I've ever seen at not getting rattled, not going off message, not saying anything that he might regret saying. And Sue Altman, this is, I think back to 2 and 4 years ago, and where it was the battle of the Toms. It was it was a little duller, and Sue is a first-time candidate, become a really, really strong competitor. It's clear how she was on a basketball court, and I think she's been able to transfer this over. So to answer your question, we don't know what's going to happen. This is a tight district. This is a tight race, and these are two good candidates for what each of their party wants them to be.
Yeah, Micah, you go ahead, Micah. I was going to say,
no, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've worked for Jim McGreevey. You worked in crisis communication. You've helped get people ready for debates. Again, you were seeing two different deliveries, but content-wise, how would you say that both of them were able to deliver their messages? Again, even though they had different styles of delivery.
Yeah. So one of the moments that I think was the most pointed of the evening is when Sue pressed uh, Tom Kaine on whether or not he supported mass deportations after I'd asked that question, and there was dead silence for what, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. That takes a lot of discipline on both of their parts not to fill that space. And I think it gets to what David just said. In Kaine's part, he was not going to be rattled. On her part, she was going to do everything she could to keep him on the spot. And so I think both were loaded for bear. Both were ready in different ways. Kaine in his lower key approach, but also making all the points that he wanted to make, not really conceding. There were other moments that I think she was able to get the better of him, not having a national minimum wage over $7.25. That's a little bit of a harsh answer, honestly, in New Jersey. And so I think she held him to account on everything. She conceded nothing.
Yeah. Joey, there were a couple times that you were pressing the candidates. You wanted to get an answer. I think one of the questions that neither of them ultimately answered was about the living wage. You did get them, as Mike was talking about, on the minimum wage. But, you really, we really thought this through and wanted to make sure that we provided the viewers with as much information and really held the candidates as close as we could to the fire to ensure that they answered that question. So was there anything that you were left feeling like, no, they didn't do that, or I wish they would have, or they really just kind of avoided that?
I mean, as moderators, we always wish that the candidates would give more specific and less talking point heavy answers. So one thing that I noticed when I asked my question about development in the 7th district, both of them eventually did get to the point about, whether they think that they should restrict development or whatever. But it took them each about 45 seconds of talking about how beautiful the 7th district was and how, Sue Altman was talking about development in New York City, and, it's all this stuff. So I don't think that there was any issue, or at least obviously we weren't able to get to all of our issues. Candidly, we had many questions that didn't even make it into the debate because there was so much back and forth during the debate. So if you were watching and thinking, why the hell didn't they bring that up? It's why. Yeah, right. We wanted to make sure that there was an actual back and forth. We wanted to make sure that on the questions that they didn't really, they gave kind of a squeamish answer. We wanted to make sure that they actually got hit with it. But so there will always be things that we wish we could have gotten to and that we wish we could have pressed on. But I think that for the most part, a lot of the questions that voters might most pressingly have, the candidates did ultimately provide an answer in one direction or another, especially on the thumbs up round, which, there's no hiding from a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah, and that was David's idea to do the. I'm gonna go back to David on that. The thumbs up, thumbs down. There was a little bit of concern, perhaps, from some people going into this, because that wasn't something that we have done in the past. Lightning round of questions. So let me get your final thoughts on that. I'll get each of you final thoughts as we wrap up our post-show debate questions.
Laura, my final thought is we extended our debates this cycle from 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And despite that, we can't get anywhere near as close to asking all the questions we'd like to ask. And maybe there's not enough debates between candidates, whether it's U.S. Senate or Congress, and certainly not at the local level. So I'm glad we got to do a few things that didn't require a long amount of time going back and forth. I think we saw more agreement on those thumbs up, thumbs down than we did in any other part of the debate. And
I actually was, I was keeping track of those, and I think there were just three or four that they disagreed on, and you got to a lot of them. You fired them off.
Yeah, I mean it's good for voters to hear that too. We'll talk after these debates are over, when we sit and digest how we did this cycle, and how much time we really need to for voters to get in the balance between how much time do we really need to answer questions. We could have gone on for hours and asked lots of important questions, but voters don't want to hear us for hours. Maybe they want to hear Joey and Micah. They sure don't want to hear me. So, but yeah, I thought that was fun. I thought it was good to mix it up a little bit. And we almost had to, because they were going back and forth. And I think, Laura, you did a great job, because that was a good call to allow that back and forth. So it's not just the rehearsed answers.
Well, that's when they start getting good sometimes. And then you're actually getting to answer and holding each other accountable, as opposed to us jumping in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, there's very few, remember we at the Globe and on New Jersey and the Rebuttals Institute don't like to do gotcha questions. The flip side of avoiding a gotcha question is we rarely get something that the candidate hasn't prepared for and hasn't anticipated. And that's because they're anticipating the important questions that will be facing Congress in the future, and those are what we're asking. So I think if we continue in the future to maybe mix it up a little bit, maybe throw a little bit of a curveball, never a gotcha, but a little curveball, might provide some interesting debates.
Yeah, well, as we're closing out, final thoughts here, Micah, as I say in the introduction, any number of these topics we could dedicate an entire show to, but we do think our questions through ahead of time, try and get through as many topics as possible. And David did get in it's not a gotcha, but a lighter moment. Do you believe in extraterrestrial life outside? And they both thumbs up on that. Micah, just your final thoughts here.
Yeah. I'm getting ready to give midterms this week, and I try to do a combination of essays and multiple choice. Multiple choice, single right or wrong, yes or no questions. There's no fudging it. There's no dancing around it. There's no talking around it. So I give both candidates a lot of credit. When David brought up this idea, I said, well, if they do it, it'll be great. If they actually respond, it'll be great. But I don't know if they're going to want to, because they can't explain their positions. They can't talk about their positions. So I give Kaine and Altman both credit for playing along. They were good sports.
Yeah, they were. All right, Joey Fox, final thoughts on this debate in these last 90 minutes.
I mean, I guess what I'll say is I think that all four of us have danced around this a little bit. Anyone who watches the debate will kind of realize that debating is not what Tom Kaine Jr. is absolutely best at. And I think that anybody who watched it will see that, Sue Altman was frequently more effective at delivering her points and making sure that her arguments kind of landed. But at the same time, this is the Tom Kaine Jr. who beat Tom Malinowski in 2022. This is the Tom Kaine Jr. who nearly unexpectedly flipped the seat in 2020 when it was bluer. This is the Tom Kaine Jr. who held by the end, a pretty Democratic-leaning legislative seat that had a lot of moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats for 20 years. So, I mean, we'd like to pretend, or it's not just pretending, we'd like to think that our debates are very important, and I think they are, because I think that they really do give voters the ability to sort of see their candidates in an unscripted moment and see where they agree and disagree with the different contenders. But I also think that, this is still anybody's race, and we've seen debates like this before, and Tom Kaine Jr. has kept on coming out on top. So we'll see whether that continues this year. I guess that's my final thought.
Okay, and I want to remind the audience that we're going to be back on Wednesday night, the 16th at 8 o'clock. Again, the first and only debate in the 9th Congressional District between Nellie Poe, Democrat, and Republican Billy Priamp. David Wildstein, Joey Fox, Micah Rasmussen, thank you all for sticking around. Thank you all for being part of the debate. I'd like to thank On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and the Rebuttals Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Thank you to our sponsors, AZI, AARP, and the AARP New Jersey, AARP. And thank you to the audience so much for watching. I'm Laura Jones. You can go to ONNJ.com to watch a replay of this debate. Have a great night, and remember, election day is November 5th in New Jersey and all over. Have a great night.